Let's touch grass and consider, if you wanted to become filthy rich in the year 1200, where would you build your kingdom? Well, just like everything else in this world, there isn't a simple answer, but one region certainly rose to the top of the rankings in terms of post-classical wealth: Southeast Asia. Across South and Southeast Asia, different kingdoms stumbled upon completely different business models, and they all worked. However, they all worked because each area leveraged their own strengths, rather than just trying to copy each other. Khmer was one of the dominant powers of mainland Southeast Asia. Its business model can be summed as grow food. Like, all the food. Imagine your friends tell everyone to bring some food for the potluck. One kid brings a big bag of chips, another brings a tray of cookies, and then one absolute maniac shows up with enough food to feed the entire neighborhood. There's always one. So that was Khmer. Their capital, Angkor, wasn't just surrounded by farms. It was surrounded by one of the most sophisticated water management systems on Earth. Massive reservoirs called barays and hundreds of canals captured monsoon rains and spread water across the countryside. Instead of just hoping it rained at the right time for their crops to grow, the Khmer basically engineered nature into cooperating. So more water meant more rice. More rice meant more people. More people meant more taxes, bigger armies, and enough extra food that not everyone had to be a farmer anymore. Suddenly, you can afford priests, artists, architects, and the thousands of workers needed to build places like the famous Temple of Angkor Wat. Turns out, food isn't just food. Food is money. And unlike what the notorious B.I.G. said, mo money does not mean mo problems, especially when your biggest problem is famine. More money means less problems, better quality of life, and the rise of specialized industries. Now, Srivijaya's business model was own the toll booth. Imagine every delivery truck between Chicago and New York had to drive through your driveway, and you got paid for every single one. Congratulations, you're rich. So that was basically the Strait of Malacca. It's one of the narrowest choke points in the world, and if you wanted to sail between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea, odds are you were sailing right past or through Srivijaya. Here's the thing though. Srivijaya didn't actually produce most of the expensive stuff being traded. They weren't famous for growing spices or weaving silk. They didn't have to. They made money because everyone else needed to pass by or through them. Think of it like a medieval truck stop. Ships stopped to repair their boats, refill fresh water, buy supplies, hire translators, pay taxes, and trade cargo before continuing their journey. Merchants from China, Southwest Asia, and Dar al-Islam all crossed paths there. Now, if you're wondering why merchants didn't just sail around Srivijaya and avoid those taxes, well, they could. You know, if they wanted to add hundreds of miles to their trip, burn through extra supplies, and risk storms and pirates. Turns out, paying a toll doesn't sound so bad compared to that. So sometimes the easiest way to become rich isn't making something. It's owning the path everyone else has to use. So, on to the next one. The business model of the Cholas was, don't wait for customers. If Srivijaya said, come to me, the Chola said, we'll come to you. The Cholas ruled southern India, and were not all about that notice me senpai kind of passive marketing. Instead of sitting around and hoping merchants would show up, they built one of the strongest navies anywhere in Asia. Imagine the company Amazon deciding that instead of paying for delivery drivers, they'd bill an army of drones. Well, I mean, that's basically what the Cholas did, except with a navy instead of drones. Yay, boats. So Chola merchant guilds traveled all over Southeast Asia, selling textiles, jewelry, metalwork, and luxury goods. And if pirates, rival kingdoms, or anybody else threatened those trade routes, The Chola Navy had a tendency to show up and remind everyone why attacking merchants was a bold and bad move. Even by 1200, when they weren't as powerful as they used to be, they still had the power of brand recognition. They had representatives at all the major ports, and customers respected them. The Cholas understood something every successful business eventually learns. If your customers won't come to you, go find the customers. Now, the Majapahit business model was, welcome to Costco! No, seriously. The Majapahit, aka the Javanese, ports offered numerous and complete goods, more so than any regional center. In other words, imagine walking into the biggest Costco, or Sam's Club, I don't judge, that you've ever seen. Silk? Yep. Spices? Yep. Porcelain? Yep. Textiles? Yep. If you could not find it in a Javanese port, then it probably wasn't worth buying. Merchants weren't just showing up because Majapahit had one famous product. They came because everybody else was already there. It's the same reason giant shopping malls exist today. Once enough stores move in, customers naturally follow. Once enough customers arrive, even more stores open, trying to take advantage of all of the foot traffic. The marketplace keeps getting bigger because success attracts more success. Economists call this a network effect. Majapahit just called it Tuesday. So, how do you get rich before modern capitalism? Kingdoms across Southeast Asia did this by growing food, aka agricultural surplus, owning the toll booth, aka travel choke points and transit trade, sailing to their customers, aka protecting and expanding markets, and building the biggest marketplace around, aka market concentration and network effects. Now that smells like generational wealth. Today's AP tip is on how to think like a business owner instead of an artist. When you're looking at a painting, sculpture, decoration, or piece of architecture in a DBQ, don't just think, ooh, pretty, ugly, whatever. Artists think of brushstrokes and color theory, but in business, not so much. Instead ask, who paid for this? Because somebody certainly did. Money has to come from somewhere. Did it come from trade? Taxes? Agricultural surplus? Religious donations? The person paying the bill can tell you just as much as the symbolism behind the artwork. For example, take Angkor Wat. Most students look at it and immediately think, so like, it's a Hindu temple that later became Buddhist. Yes, that's true. Good job. But think, who kept paying for it? When Jayavarman VII took over the empire, his wife Indra Devi was a devout Mahayana Buddhist and an influential scholar. Likely as a result of her influence, Jayavarman converted to Buddhism himself and also rededicated Angkor Wat to Buddhism. Hindu support of Angkor Wat declined, and over time, Buddhist communities became the ones maintaining the temple. Centuries later, even Japanese Buddhist pilgrims contributed to preserving it. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, the bas-relief carvings and artwork show a Hindu influence on what became a Buddhist temple. But if you follow the money, you'll often discover who's gaining power, what people value, and why societies change. All right, our walk is finished, so Romeo and I are heading out. Peace!